You just entered the Extra Zone Arcade. This year has been pretty big for kart racers. I mean, we finally got a new Mario Kart after 11 years. We'll talk about that soon, don't worry. Kirby Air Ride is making a return after 22 years with a new game. And how could we ever forget about Garfield Kart 2? But the one that had me the most intrigued of all was Sonic Racing Crossworlds. Why? Well, Sonic Racing games have had an interesting history to say the least. From the humble beginnings of Sonic Drift on the Game Gear, to the on-foot racing of Sonic R, then the sick-ass airboarding action of the Riders series, and the crossover madness of the All-Star series, Sonic has tried a lot of different things in the racing game genre. They don't always work out though.
Well, looks like there's still one last race left to run today.
I have half a mind to just fucking end this stream. Never in my life have I been so fucking exhausted, so fucking frustrated. I think it goes without saying that this has been the most miserable gaming experience I've ever had. I don't know if I can even bring myself to do one more. But when they hit, some of these games can stack up to most Mario Kart titles. All-Stars Racing Transform being my favourite of them all for its deep and rewarding gameplay and lovingly crafted tracks. The most recent Sonic racer prior to Crossworlds was Team Sonic Racing, which was developed by the studio that made the two All-Stars games. The first one was actually the first Sonic game I ever played, so I have that one to blame for my interest in this franchise. Unfortunately, TSR just couldn't hold a candle to those games with a boring and repetitive story mode, severely lacking roster, and underutilized gimmick. It wasn't a bad game by any means, but it lacked any kind of identity and really just felt like a rushed job despite being delayed by around 6 months. Worst of all is that the game was essentially dead on arrival, as Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled released only a month later and completely embarrassed Sonic, with more content, better marketing, and an actual content roadmap. Not helping was the fact that Sonic's reputation was in the shitter at the time, while Crash was a rising star. Oh, how times have changed in 6 years. But with 3 wildly successful movies, games that are selling and reviewing better than ever, and generally more love being put into the franchise now, what would a new Sonic racing game look like? We got our first peek at it during last year's Game Awards. It was just one of those CGI teasers Sega loves to do, but one curious detail was that an extreme gear from the Riders series could be seen under a sheet in the background. Then we get a full reveal trailer where not only did we see that gear in action, but also none other than Jet the Hawk riding one. This was pretty huge, because outside of mobile games and the Olympics, he and the other Babylon Rogues hadn't appeared in any game since Free Riders in 2010. You know, the game that effectively killed that sub-series. Alright, I won't keep talking about that, but man, it pisses me off. We also got a look at a whole lot of courses, both new and familiar to longtime fans, and the return of transforming vehicles from All-Stars, as well as the titular Crossworlds feature. On the second lap of a race, you get transported to a completely different track, which is something that set this game apart right off the bat. Not long after that second trailer dropped, we got to experience the game for ourselves during the closed network test. Side note, I remember myself and a lot of other people signed up to it through Sega Asia by mistake. To be fair, the pre-registration site was up like a whole day before the English one, so it would always pop up first in Google search results for Crossworlds. So I had to make a South Asian PlayStation account just so I could participate, and you know what? I'm glad I went through the trouble. I came away from that weekend feeling extremely confident and excited with this game's direction. But naturally, there were some things that needed work, like the game's controls being a little stiff and the item balancing being completely screwed. Like, if you think online is crazy now, you are not there for the CNT. In the following months, we'd get more tidbits, but the next major reveals came at the Summer Game Fest. Other Sega and Sega adjacent characters would be joining the fray, such as Joker from Persona 5, Ichiban from Like a Dragon, and motherfucking Hatsune Miku! Yeah, I couldn't tell you how many people I've talked to that said they'd get this game just for her. Hell, we'd even get some Miku bangers out of it, and the world is a better place for it. But not only that, we'd also be getting some more insane crossovers, with the first officially revealed being Minecraft. The rest of the summer season consisted of small trailers, interviews, and demos, one of which was the open network test. You could immediately tell a lot of the major criticisms were adjusted, and the experience was much smoother overall. This was also the first time we could play with extreme gear, and I've had a hard time going back to the cars ever since. That same weekend, we got the badass animation that was clearly inspired by Redline. Love to see that tradition continue with every new Sonic release. They really made driving cars into a shonen battle sequence, and spoilers, Shadow actually takes the W this time, cementing him as the new main character of the franchise. Skip forward a few weeks and we get the demo, which was super bare bones, even more than the closed network test. And the following week, the game drops on September 22nd for advanced access and September 25th normally. So, was it good? Since there's no story, let's talk about the presentation first. The game has an awesome and at times pretty stylized opening sequence, with the game's main theme blaring in the background. It's incredibly corny, but this is the same franchise with songs like Sonic Heroes and Gotta Go Fast, so it fits right in. With a stroke of luck, you might become a monster truck. There is no way they wrote that lyric with a straight face. The game is running on Unreal Engine 5, but I'm happy to report this game has no performance issues, at least on PS5. I played the demo for the Switch version on Switch too, and despite being 30 FPS and looking a whole lot crunchier, it ran consistently. As a result of the shiny new engine, it looks pretty fantastic with colourful and highly detailed environments, pretty good character animations and models, and good lighting/visual effects. Though the 10 FPS PNG Chow in the bleachers and low poly Sonic Forces avatars can sometimes look a little jarring and out of place. But hey, if it's in the name of good optimization, then I can excuse it. A small nitpick I have with the visuals is just I wish the characters weren't using these renders that look like they're from 15 years ago. I get that a lot of these characters don't have new models to fit with the more current rendering style of Frontiers and Shadow Gens, but the effort wouldn't have gone unnoticed. Sonic, Knuckles and Charmy are particularly noticeable in this regard. It would be nice to see them do away with this old rendering style and fully commit to the newer stuff in the near future. But I get it's a racing spin-off, so that kind of thing isn't the priority. Speaking of those characters, the roster here is a far cry from Team Sonic Racing. You have your expected picks like Tails, Amy, Knuckles, Shadow and Eggman, but also more recent characters like Sage from Frontiers. The Chaotix are finally back together, with this being Charmy's first playable appearance in a non-mobile game in 22 years. Dude hasn't been playable for damn near as long as I've been alive, that's crazy. Cream and Cheese are back to properly round out Team Rose, and of course we have the return of the Babylon Rogues, and Egg Porn. Yeah, even the other characters don't know why he's here, but he's got vibes, so he's cool. We got pretty much every major character at this point in the franchise. This is the entirety of what I'd consider the main Sonic cast, with no big players left out. And anyone that was can just be added as DLC down the line as part of a free season pass. So far, Miku is the only one added, and is actually the only boost-type designated character. Weird. We also got the Werehog and Sonic Prime characters as the pre-order bonuses. Honestly, I haven't even touched the Prime characters at all. I just really don't care for them that much when the OGs are just cooler. And it's a real big shame none of the additional characters other than Miku are voiced. I really hope there's enough outcry about this so that it can be fixed. The game is looking like it will do crazy numbers, so they'll surely be able to afford it. Especially their in-house characters. But ultimately, that can also be boiled down to a nitpick. What matters most is the gameplay, so how does that fare? Well, I can say this is a damn amazing feeling game. It really feels like an arcade racer with controls that are easy to pick up, but hard to master. The first thing I'd recommend before getting into a race is turning on the dynamic camera, as the game can feel a little sluggish without that, and turn up steering sensitivity. I have it between 7 and 10 usually, and it can help with some of those trickier corners. There's also auto accelerate and steering assist, so make sure those are off and you can do more of the cool skips. Or don't, you know, I won't judge that much. There's a ton of vehicles here with loads of customization options to tune your ride to your liking. There are speed type, acceleration, handling, power and boost type vehicles. I typically go with boost type, which are the extreme gear. I've become more of an inside drifter in recent years and I tend to prioritize it for those mini turbos, so the extreme gear are perfect for me. And they just look so freaking cool. But your build on this game depends not just on the vehicle or character type, but also your gadgets. As you play through the game, you'll upgrade your gadget plate and get new ones to add to it, with a total of 6 slots. Some of the more powerful ones will take up more spaces, so make sure to think carefully about what perks to prioritize. So for me, since I'm leaning heavily into that boosting and drifting setup, my go-to gadget plate is this one. Air Trick Expert, level 2 quick charge, ultimate charge, and either a speed tuner or ring range increase depending on the character. Another one I experimented with was the counter drift charge, which instantly fills the gauge to level 1 if you change directions during a drift. This combined with level 2 and 3 quick charge and ultimate charge will pretty much make you invincible for a lot of the race. I can't tell you how many times that level 4 drift boost invincibility saved me from the insane items in this game. We'll get to those in a sec, but I really like this gadget system a lot. The more I played the game, the more I wanted to experiment with different builds. I started to think about whether I should prioritize rings or defense, or maybe if I should go for gadgets that make my item game stronger. There's truly a great number of options here, and no doubt everyone's setups will look different. I'm sure a meta build will emerge soon given this game's competitive online scene, but as of writing this, the game's only been out a week, so folks are still experimenting. So yeah, I was really impressed with the gadgets, but what about the game's item pool? At first, it was pretty unclear what they all did, especially back during that first network test where the items were way more abundant. Now that I spent enough time learning it all and know what they all do, I feel like I can much more effectively strategize around it all. One thing I really love is that with the right setup and enough skill, you can pretty much deflect any attack. Even this game's Blue Shell equivalent, King Boom Boom. Though there are two that always get me no matter how hard I try. One of which is the Shuriken, which slices your ride in half, and the damn slime. Getting hit with either of these is basically a death sentence here, since not only do they slow you down exponentially, but they also take your items away. These will both leave you a sitting duck, and somehow people always use this on me at exactly the right moment. More often than not, I end up deflecting a Dark Chow, which is an item that actually gives everyone random items. You know, the one that's actually helpful. Laser and Drill Wisps are your catch-up items, though I feel the laser rarely ever took me past 9th place at the best of times. Probably the most useless item in the game, unless you bag it to the top positions to dodge attacks, but that strat isn't all that good, unlike a certain other kart racer. The monster truck is pretty much the mega mushroom of this game, and while it doesn't completely turn the tide of the race like in the betas, it's still pretty dangerous. Then you have your standard stuff like your boost wisps, bombs, red and green boxing gloves, spike ball, and shield. You know, typical kart racing hazards and attack items. There's also the magnet, which is supposed to attach to opponents and drag them off course, but it isn't all that good, so myself and a lot of other people just use it to block attacks. Pretty much a defensive item at this point. Overall, the item play in this game feels a lot less chaotic than before, but this is a kart racer at the end of the day, so races will come down to good use of them a lot of times. Though this game does reward skillful use of items and strong fundamentals, so 9 times out of 10, the better player will win. It feels less like a random game of chance, even if you do end up getting Mario Karted. This far into the video and I haven't talked tracks? Let's get into those, because there is a ton of variety here. First of all, there's pretty much an equal number of tracks based on other Sonic games and completely original locations. The recreations were all done lovingly, with tons of callbacks within the track design itself and in the background. My favourites had to be Radical Highway and White Space. Yes, I love Shadow Generations, how can you tell? Though I feel like Radical Highway takes a lot more from the original Adventure 2 version with the lighting and background elements. White Space is my favourite track in the game, with a fantastic blend of difficult turns, skill-based shortcuts, and a dynamic layout that turns into the Doom space for lap 3. I'm also a huge fan of the All Hail Shadow remix this track uses, but we'll talk more about the music in a minute. Each track was so carefully crafted for the best racing experience, and you never feel like you're getting the same thing twice. Tracks like Aqua Forest focus on the boat mechanics, with a ton of shortcuts to take as you drive down the winding water slides. Coral Town has a ton of alternate routes, most of which I still haven't explored as of writing. Chow Park is full of tricky turns and trick opportunities, meaning that you're going to be boosting a whole lot here. Funny enough, it's implied this track takes place somewhere in Station Square from Sonic Adventure. In the credits, it cuts to this track after showing a screenshot of Amy in the city in Adventure. Then if you look in the background of the track, you can see some very familiar buildings. Must have built this park after the Perfect Chaos incident. Honestly, the only track I'm not super enthusiastic about is Blizzard Valley. It's a mining facility in a wintry tundra, where the track is slippery and high winds push you around. So there's pretty much 2 track hazards that worsen your control, and from what I can tell, doubly so if you're in a car. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure the low traction on the icy floor doesn't affect the extreme gears, at least not to the extent of the on-wheels vehicles. It makes sense, but then why does grass slow them down? Then there's the titular Crossworlds, which are just as, if not more varied than the regular tracks. Once again, you have callback tracks to previous Sonic Racing and other Sonic titles, and wholly original ones. There's also that one Lava Planet track, which is based on Galaxy Force 2 of all things. Weird that's the only Sega crossover track, but alright. Steampunk City was one of my favourites for its unique theming. That's not an aesthetic we've really seen with Sonic, so it was interesting to see how they tackle this look. Cyberspace from Sonic Frontiers was also a nice surprise, with the track taking inspiration from 4-2. Frontiers got a lot of love here between this, Kronos Island being another amazing track, and all the unlockable music from that game. Hell, the special credit sequence ends with I'm Here, which almost felt like the developers subtly owing everything to that game. Anyway, the highlight of the Cyberspace track has to be the music, which remixes the infamously hard to S rank 1-2, with added sax. Hearing this the first time was an angelic experience, I swear on everything. The soundtrack of this game is just so solid, man. I know some people weren't super on board with it based on those DJ mixes they showed us before the game released, but there are some bangers. Going back to Kronos Island, they did such a perfect job taking that calming and serene atmosphere and turning it into an epic and intense racing tune. Then going into the final lap and getting the fucking crazy I'm Here remix, really making you feel like you gotta put your all into the last stretch of the race. Perfect song for locking in. Crystal Mine's Sonic Adventure-esque sound, the hip-hop rock fusion of the spooky Pumpkin Mansion, the jazz of Wonder Museum. This game has some variety, and usually I prefer the Sonic soundtracks with variety, so I'd say it's an overall win. I'll definitely need to listen to more of these tracks isolated from the chaotic ass gameplay with the constant sound effects and character lines. 1, 2, 3, hee hee lives rent-free in my head. Oh man, I haven't even talked about the character interactions. Well, we could be here for hours covering it all, and I mean hours. But these are great. Between the rival dialogue that's just filled with deep cut references and characters finally gaining their aura back after 15 years, and the item hit dialogue, there's some great stuff here. Ian Flynn is behind the fire writing once again after gracing us with the stories of Frontiers and Shadow Gens. Everyone, except for Amy, like, damn girl, fight back, is in top form here. And they even did the impossible of making me actually kinda like Zavok and Zaz. These two have some surprisingly great dialogue, especially so from Zavok, who's voiced by Patrick freaking Seitz. Yeah, as in English dubbed Dio, Jiren, and the current voice of my goat, the talking flower from Mario Wonder. But what about those other modes? Obviously you've got your Grand Prix races, but you've also got Time Trials and Race Park. The latter has you facing off with rival teams to unlock rewards like vehicles and tickets. There are a bunch of different modes, including team-based ring races, team shootouts, and even extreme items. In the team races, if you and your team place well and meet the stipulation, you'll beat your opponents no problem. This mode gets even more fun on multiplayer, though it's a shame the online version only gives unlocks to the party host. That's pretty dumb. Regardless, I spent a lot of time unlocking everything here, and it's still my go-to when playing with friends and family. The last thing I want to cover is the online. It's pretty damn great. It's incredibly fast getting into matches, ranking up is both satisfying and rewarding, and best of all, people are actually playing it. Even now that the game's been out for a while, the player count seems to be going strong, with me constantly finding matches quickly. The game's content roadmap and special events will certainly keep it alive and well for the year of support it'll be getting. And if it does well enough, it seems like we can expect some more season passes in the coming years. I think the game's community is going to thrive, not just for that upcoming content, but just because the game itself is so incredibly fun. Those moments at the end of the race where it was a photo finish, and you hold your breath waiting for that results screen only contribute to the already addictive gameplay loop. I seriously have a hard time ever putting this game down, and I mean, just look at my live channel for 1 second if you need proof of that. I've already doubled my playtime here over Mario Kart World because it's just that goddamn fun. And not to spoil that video I have planned, but ultimately, this game's sheer fun factor is going to keep me coming back way more. As fantastic as Mario Kart World is, the main selling point of the game is just boring. The open world and intermission tracks seem like fun on paper, but in practice, it's a whole lot of downtime in a kart racer, a genre that should do everything in its power to avoid that. Not helping is Nintendo's insistence that you play the game this way. In comparison, Sonic's Crossworlds are a much more engaging and satisfying selling point. I still think an argument can be made for which game is better, but Crossworlds is simply more fun to me, and so it's my preferred game of the two. The in-depth and more personalized vehicle customization, the much better, though at times pretty stingy, unlock system, less cluttered UI, and freaking cross-platform matchmaking are also huge benefits Crossworlds has to ensure I'll revisit it for many years to come. It may not be my game of the year, but it's so close that it may as well just be a joint winner. Alright, that ended up a little longer than I thought, but what did you guys think of our first review post Mario 40th 2 perspective? Feels nice to cover something that isn't the plumber again. What did you guys think of Crossworlds? Are you as hopelessly addicted to it as I am, or are you a normal person? Let me know down below, and don't forget to share some support with a like and subscribe while you're there. Way more content like this headed your way in the future. Next, I want to do a compilation of some of the best moments from our Mario Kart-a-thon, so keep an eye out for that. Until then, take care and look out for any green globs of slime overhead. Later!